Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. One question which I'm asked fairly regularly is, how can I learn quicker? Is there a faster way to learn? Because we're all in this situation where we look at vocabulary books, we try to read, we try to learn, and we find that the words just don't stick with us. We read them once in our Quizlets, we think, okay, yeah, I remember that word. Within an hour, it's gone. We try to read a book in English, we read the first sentence, we write down the words in our notebook, but again, within an hour, we've forgotten them. If you line that up with what we're told by the media, and the media often present very skewed images to us of what reality is, we see things like polyglots on YouTube who speak 10 languages, yet we can barely speak one. And then we also see ideas on TV of people with photographic memories, where they can read something once and remember it forever. I was watching the TV show Criminal Minds the other day, and Dr. Spencer Reid, who's a member of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, he's able to pick up a book, scan it, and remember everything. Now, are there people out there who are really like that? Well, yes, I'm sure there are. So, what happened to us that we can barely get hold of a bit of vocabulary? Well, the answer isn't as complicated as you might think. Let me explain. For most of us, when we were at school, the person who was able to display the best memory was often rewarded. And we all know, I'm sure you can remember from your school days, there was always somebody who seemed to have an amazing memory. And they were always selected to receive prizes. They were always praised and rewarded, whereas the rest of us weren't. That was fairly standard, I think, for those of us, at least of a certain age. And then we kind of grew up thinking, well, there's people better than us. And we've carried that. And now we come to learn something at our age and experience. And these memories of not quite being good enough are still with us. So we look at the book of vocabulary and we think, oh, yeah, I'm going to try to learn that. And then we can't. And the next thing you know, we're in this shame spiral. And we go all the way down thinking, I don't know why, but this is too hard. We try it again the next day and we think, maybe if I just book a lesson with a teacher, he will give me those words and then I'll remember them. And that rarely works as well. And so we get a bit stuck. And then we wonder, well, what can I do? How can I learn things? What can I do to make this right? And of course, we look for other ways. We try to buy books which promise us that they'll work. We look for flashcard apps like Quizlet and Anki because after all, they should work, shouldn't they? Many people use them. For some people they do, and for some people they don't. So, what's the answer? How are we supposed to deal with this when these kind of things come up? Well, I have an answer, and I guarantee you if you do this, your memory will be absolutely fine for recalling things which you see only once. It's not particularly difficult, but it takes a little bit of an effort. So, here goes. Now, over the years, I've been a teacher now, I think, for 35 years. So, during my time as a teacher, I've noticed a few different things. One of those things is that those people who have some kind of meditative practice to allow them to live in the moment are almost certainly most successful at learning. Now, the type of meditative practice they have is not so important, but what it does is it allows them to be relaxed enough and to be calm enough to absorb information. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have heard the word meditation and you think, oh no, no, don't put me in a room of silence on my own and ask me to do anything with that. But it doesn't have to be that way. When I say meditation, it's some kind of practice which you're comfortable with, which makes you calm and relaxed. Okay, now I was teaching really before the IT profession kicked off, okay? But what I've discovered, especially in the last 10 and 15 years, is that there's many software developers and people who work under such stress that they've had to find some kind of meditative practice. Not because they want to be relaxed to do their job, but it's because it helps them solve problems. I've been talking to a few of those people fairly recently. One of them told me that he needs to have moments of silence to gather his thoughts, you know. He needs to step back from problems and maybe sit in silence for 10 or 15 minutes to try to wait for the answer to surface. There was another guy from Brazil fairly recently who told me that he likes to chant. I think he told me he was a member of the Hare Krishna movement. And then there's another one who told me that they do yoga in the morning time and in the evening. Now, those people by far are much more successful at learning because they can look at a book and they're living in the moment to take those words and remember them. Now, before you kind of turn off the podcast and say there's no way, because we are very cynical people, of course, because of our age and experience of life, I want you just to remember one thing. This is not about the meditative practice. This is about the result of the meditative practice to get you to be relaxed. Okay? So the actual practice that you choose to do, whether it's chanting, standing in your head for half an hour, or maybe if it's something more conservative in some kind of religious way, the idea is it relaxes you and brings you to the table with an open mind. I mean, most of us get out of bed, stagger to the sofa, have a cup of coffee, if you smoke, light up a cigarette, and then wonder how our lives ever became so crazy. But if you have a practice which is affirmative, it can actually put you in the right frame of mind for learning. You know, when we go on holiday, we become different people, don't we? We go to a new country, suddenly there's a smile on our face. We often wonder what it would be like to live in this state permanently. And on the last day of our holidays, we make promises to ourselves to change and become more relaxed because we're so in touch with our natural way of being that we want to try to hold on to that feeling. We return to work for the first few days. We're smiling, we're relaxed. By the end of the week, though, the feeling is gone. Maybe for some of you, within a few hours after you've received that call. And then you wonder, wow, what was that holiday all about and how happy we were feeling? That is the kind of attitude you want to get before you come to the English learning table. It's that place where you're living in the moment, where you're able to absorb all the information in the book, because at that moment, it's the only thing that matters. Now, how you get to that point, whether it's through meditation, through some kind of religious practice, or through some kind of positive thinking, it's really not so important. But if you can get to that point, I can guarantee you that your learning experience is going to be very, very different. To create or develop some kind of meditative practice is actually not so difficult. To make it a habit can be quite difficult, but to develop one and to keep doing it for, the first few days, it can be difficult. But it's going to benefit your life in many ways, not only for learning English, but I think you'll suddenly see the world in perhaps a more positive way. Because when something relaxes your mind, it tends to be affirmative and helps us. Now, I'm not talking about hypnosis or affirmations, which have this philosophy of your mind being a little bowl which is lacking words or lacking something. I'm actually talking about something which pushes you forward, something which you naturally connect with. This thing is usually something which you choose. Unfortunately, religious dogmas tend to make us feel guilty. And if we use those, if they bring you joy, very good. But if it's one of these dogmas where you wake up in the morning and it's telling you, oh, you're a bad person, therefore you have to do this particular practice of reciting certain words, it probably isn't going to be so helpful. So today, I don't want you to focus too much on the word meditation, but I want you to think about what would bring you back to that place of joy and living in the moment. It could be a meditative practice, like reciting some particular type of mantra, or it might just be looking at holiday photographs from your last photo. I mean, how many of us look at photographs a second time? My telephone is full of photos that I've taken uh, on different trips and different holidays, but I never look at them. They're there, and if anyone asks me, yeah, I'll send them to you. But do we ever look at them again? And would that help us to get back into the holiday spirits? I don't know. I'm not going to get into what meditative practice you should choose, but I want you to be open-minded enough to consider how this would affect your English. Now, I do know that in the languages I've learned, to come to the table with a positive mind, ready to be learning, is absolutely vital. As I've said to many of you before, if you're coming to an English lesson which is squashed between two business meetings, and you're looking at your mobile phone, waving at people passing the meeting room, it really isn't an ideal setting for learning. It may be an ideal setting just to have a conversation with a teacher, just to say hi and hello. But it can't really go much deeper than that because the circumstances aren't there, the mentality isn't there, the consciousness isn't there. Learning English needs to have a little bit more space. All right. So that's today's exercise for you, finding some kind of meditative practice that brings your mind back to that holiday spirit. And if you really, really don't have time for that, then I think maybe you should be asking yourself, well, do I really have time for learning? Because those two things go hand in hand. So, from my experience as a teacher, um, getting in touch with yourself, whatever way you do it, it doesn't have to be called a meditative practice. It could be making time for yourself to have a really long hot bath for a couple of hours, maybe. And I know what you're going to tell me. Oh, I don't have time for that either. Well, it's time to make time for that. And I can guarantee you that if you look at a book of vocabulary in that state of mind, you're going to remember much more of it than you do while you're looking at it with a dog barking at you, waiting to go outside, a couple of kids screaming, uh, while you can hear the clock ticking when you have to leave the house. So, a meditative practice changes everything. It changes your mindset, it changes your approach to time. And I really, really recommend it if you're struggling with things like memory. How you define it is entirely up to you, but that's today's goal, trying to get back in touch with yourself and your ideas. And when you're in that place, then you come to English. I hope you found this helpful. It's a little bit long winded, but it's definitely worth a try. All right, so that's it from me. So I'll see you all again soon. Bye.